As well as the kind of support amongst the trade union movement, I think it's also worth noting that we also need a political voice as well, and we've got a local MP here, Julie Hilling, who's going to say a few words.
Hi everybody, I'm Julie Hilling, I'm the newly elected MP for Bolton West, and I particularly wanted to come today to show my support for young people. And I won't spend too long talking to you, but there's a few things I want to say. But one of the things I'm going to say to start with, and it isn't something that's popular or something that I find very easy to say, but in reality, had there been a Labour government elected in May, that there would have been cuts. I don't want to hear that, and I know that none of you do, but there's one major difference. The cuts would not be the amount or the direction that these cuts are actually taking, because make no mistake, these cuts are ideologically driven. These cuts are actually about dismantling the whole of the welfare state, dismantling all of our public services. It's not about need, it's about desire. It's about saying that the National Health Service will no longer be national. It's about saying that we'll put the funding for the National Health Service in the hands of privately employed doctors. That's the nature of these cuts that we're facing. And within all of that, of course, it's going to be the most vulnerable that will suffer. And if you look at those cuts that are going to be taking place against young people, Future Jobs Fund, gone. Apprenticeships in construction, gone. Connections, on its way out. Youth service, going to be totally destroyed. University places and tuition fees. Universities that are actually supporting the most the working class young people, universities like Bolton, likely to disappear because it's the ideological driven of saying that it's the people who are better than the working classes who should have their kids educated. Targeted support for young people, gone. The other thing that of course is gone is the pledge that every young person should be either in education, training or apprenticeships. The Tories have no intention of supporting young people. We're going to go back to the 80s and 90s. I was a youth worker in the 80s and 90s, a time when we had generations of young people with no hope, no future, no jobs. I used to work in a project for young people, a youth cooperative project. The young people there, I want to tell you just a couple of stories of young people. The story of Anthony. Anthony had waited years and years to get down the pit, and he'd just got his job down the pit when they decided they were going to close the ball. Anthony then took another 5-10 years to be able to get another job. Joey, a young man who turned to drugs, and in the end, Joey still as a middle-aged man is still taking drugs. And Simon who's now dead. That's the legacy of the Tory cuts, and that's what we've got to avoid now. There are alternatives. There are alternatives to the cuts that people are making, and I know it's one that you're very strong about here, in terms of the £122 billion that could be raised through, or that's being lost through tax evasion and tax avoidance. And what we do instead of that, we decide that we're going to cut the people, the very people who are there to actually to collect those taxes. We'll say, no, we'll cut those. And then, oh, what a surprise, we'll be losing much more money through that tax evasion and tax avoidance. The Tories' answer is to put up VAT. What does VAT do? VAT harms the most vulnerable in society. All of their cuts are directed at the most vulnerable in society. You look at those cuts that are taking place in the voluntary sector, cuts to small organisations that support young people, support older people. All of it ideologically driven by them. I'm not going to take up much more of your time, but what I want to talk about is what do we actually do now? Because I think one of the things that we need to do most is not to be scrapping amongst ourselves, those people who see themselves on the left. It isn't helpful when people stand on platforms now and say, well, it's all the Labour government's fault, or Labour have done nothing else. We have a new chance for Labour. We have a new leader for Labour. We have a person who's actually saying he wants to connect with ordinary people, that he wants to listen to what ordinary people have said, and if you look at the trade union support that he actually received, is actually prepared to listen and talk to trade unionists. It is a chance for us to walk together and move together. But what we've always done on the left, we've always factionalised on the left. We've always said, oh well, my policy's a bit more pure than your policy, and oh no, my policy's better than your policy. If we don't join together on the left, if we don't form that broad coalition of trade unionists, of MPs, of activists, of Labour Party members of other political parties, and ordinary people, we will not ever be able to do anything about these cuts. And if you think about how people got together in terms of fighting the poll tax was defeated because people across the broadest spectrum actually got together and said we're not standing for it. And the question I've got to say to you is, are we prepared to put up with these cuts that are destroying the very fabric of our society? And if we're not prepared to put up with those cuts, then we need to be together collectively to do something about it. And we don't want to be talking to 50 people or 100 people. We need thousands of people to realise what the Tories and the Lib Dems, or the Tories supported by their Lib Dem puppets, are actually going to be doing to our very society. So, how are we going to build that coalition? One of the things I would say, and I plead with you to say, is don't be factionalist. Actually work together across wherever is possible. That it is about saying, talk to Labour politicians, make sure that we're bringing together all trade unions and all those ordinary people in their local groups who will be suffering most for what's happening. We need to support young people. We need to make sure that young people are in trade unions. There are too many young people who don't have a clue as to what's actually happening in society and how these cuts are going to affect them. Let's make sure we don't have another lost generation. Make sure that we don't have our services disrupted. Let's work together. I'm prepared to stand with you, and I hope that you're prepared to stand with me. Thank you.
Hello, my name's James Robinson. I'm from Knowsley Unison. I know a lot of the talk today has been focused on national, but I just want to talk about some stuff that's happening on a local level, but all of us need to be looking at as young Sage Unionists. In Knowsley Council now where I'm working, everyone's sitting around waiting for this review on the 20th of October. No one knows when their job's going to be safe or not, but also people are starting to have their redundancy letters hit them now. When I've been delivering our newsletters, I've been hearing horror stories, and it's mostly young people who've been told, right, you're on a fixed term contract, it's ended, your job's gone next week. They didn't know their rights. Some of them weren't in trade unions. It's only took me to mention a few words to them. You've got to serve your notice with this. They've gone in the office, told their manager that they've spoken to me, and already their manager's backed down and extended their contract another month. And this is happening, and this is only the stuff that I'm finding out about. So I think we need to really get round and find out what the managers are doing, what we don't know about. And that's at a local level, and really that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, well thanks very much for coming. Today I think we've had some excellent speakers, and whilst the turnout wasn't great, I think it is the start of something bigger. And actually I agree with a lot of what Julie was saying in terms of we've got to unite and fight these cuts. But I would just like also to say as well that where there are Labour politicians who are told that they have to make cuts, then we're very clear that we will work with them so long as they vote in the right way and they give us a guarantee that they will actively campaign against those cuts in those areas. Now, I'd like to thank everyone who's spoken today. I'd like to just say as well, if you're not in a trade union, join a trade union. Talk to your friends and family about trade unions. Get active in your local area. Get active in community campaigns, and let's see, if we can build the movement that defeated Thatcher in the 1980s through a mass non-payment campaign. Let's see if we can replicate that today and fight for a decent future for young people. Thanks.